And let's give a warm welcome back to Dr. Melinda Anderson from the NACADA Executive Office. Melinda was on episode 49 last time and gave us an end of the year message. So it only seemed logical to have Melinda on for episode 50 to give us a start of the year message for 2022. Melinda, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Matt. How are you?
I'm doing well. We made it to the end of 2021. Now we're at the start of 2022. Do you do anything with New Year's resolutions?
Actually, I do. It's a tradition to always tell myself that I'm going to be in the gym, sweating it out with everybody else, and I'm going to lose another 40 pounds. You know what I mean? I'm being cheeky, but, I think it is important to think about, wellness.
Mhm.
And so the beginning of each year, I always tell myself, how do I think about balance and wellness in terms of mind, body, and spirit. And so I always think about how am I going to kickstart that at the beginning of each year. So do you indulge in the old tradition of New Year's resolutions?
In a way, I do. Like I don't end up calling them New Year's resolutions anymore. I'll just call them goals, like we do throughout the year. Because I feel like if I say it's a New Year's resolution, I'll be very good, and I'll start the first couple months, maybe with my goal, and then after that, I kind of fall off. So I like to even try to start my goals like before the new year. So at least I can
Mm,
kind of build a habit with it. So a lot of times it's usually like, well, let me read more books or, whatever it might be. But I think I kind of agree with you that I think for this one, I want to really focus on myself and my wellness as well.
yeah. No, that's actually, I love that idea of just calling it a goal because you're right. When I think New Year's resolutions, right, I think the habit is also to like let them peter off. Because you know how, like, have you ever seen like a gym in the beginning of the year? Like everybody's out there working it out, like, they're going to
Mhm.
run an Ironman, event. And then, by February, it's like, hey, it's just like the people who've always been there for the
Right.
previous months, right? So, but no, I think that especially this year, given everything that we've experienced, the past couple of years, I definitely really want wellness to kind of really sit, you know, on top of mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, with this being the new year, I heard you're going to be going to all the NACADA region conferences beginning, I guess, in February throughout spring. Is this true? And how excited are you for this?
I know the rumors are true. Rumor has it. Rumor has it. Oh, I'm so sorry.
No worries.
Oh, yes, but the rumors are true. I When I came into this position, it was important for me as executive director to just kind of get a sense of, the events and the programs, the activities that we put together.
Mhm.
And so when I think about the regions, and I grew up in the regions when I think about my leadership roles when I was a member of NACADA. And so when I thought about a great way to be able to kind of, if you think about like a listening tour, right? Talking to members, talking to administrators, getting a sense of what people were wanting from the association and what was going to be able to help support them as they support students. I thought that definitely going to the regional events would be a really great way to be able to have a listening ear to what's going on. And so you're absolutely right. We start in Mystic, Connecticut in February, and then we roll all the way into May. And so it's going to be a very interesting experience, and I'll be excited to come see you by way of California,
Yep.
for Region 9. And so we'll be out there your way. And so that'll be really exciting to be in
Yeah.
Orange County. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think for listeners, if you've never met Melinda, this will be a great opportunity to meet Melinda at a region conference because, when you think of the annual conference, large event,
Right.
very hard to run into someone because you're in this convention center, so many things that are going on. And so this is kind of like a more intimate setting in a way. Usually these conferences have a few hundred people in attendance. So it gives more of an opportunity to actually talk to people, and in this case have a chance to chat with you and kind of give their opinions of NACADA, what they're looking for, hopefully what they can gain from the NACADA membership and from future conferences. So yeah, I think this will be a great opportunity if you're attending a region conference. Hey, go find Melinda or she'll find you, and you
Oh,
can
yeah.
have a nice conversation.
Absolutely. Matt, I just love the way that you talked about the region conferences. Are you a region chair? I don't know. I can't
I
really figure it out. You should be a
Yeah,
region chair.
I'll think about that.
No, you did a I actually absolutely agree with you. The annual conferences are a great opportunity, right? When you think about kind of all the opportunities, you have so many presentation opportunities to engage in. You can deliver a presentation, but then also the regional conferences. What I loved about being in the region, and when I think about kind of my role when I was coming up, is that you're right, that level of intimacy that you can get. You're still getting the professional development opportunities, you're still able to present. So if you haven't um, been to a regional conference experience, I really encourage you to could check one out. It's really a great way when you think about where you sit, locally, in terms of the way that you think about building community. It's a really great way to come. And I know that at this point, many people have already submitted their proposals. And so those decisions are being made in terms of what's going to be accepted. So I really encourage people to come to the region conference experience. It's very different than the annual conference, which is by design, right? When you think about the level of intimacy that you're talking about, and then meeting people who are sitting close to you from when you talk about proximity, in terms of where you are in the country. Um, so I really encourage people to take advantage of it. And then when I think about the institutes are also something that's going to be going on in the spring. And so when we think about the difference between an institute and an annual conference and a region conference, right? I always get that question, like, what are the differences between all these events and activities, and which one should I engage in and which one's for me? The institutes are really a particular focus, right, on a particular area. So when you think about like the assessment institute that we have, the assessment institute does a really great, and I went to the assessment institute. If you're looking at a way to think about how am I assessing like student learning outcomes for my advising program, and how am I taking that information and doing continuous improvement processes in order to make sure that I'm hitting the goals of my advising program, you're coming into this experience where you're just focusing on getting that skill set and thinking differently about how you're building that assessment program for your advising unit. And then the administrative institute, if you're a senior level administrator versus, I'm a new, director to advising, or I'm aspiring to be a director of an advising program, you're thinking about what are some of the challenges or issues or opportunities as an administrator in terms of some of the things that we're thinking about, from an academic advising perspective. But it's narrowly focused. And then you have presentations that you're engaged in, and then you're building a program or a plan at the end of the day that you're walking home with. So it's very different from a conference experience where you're just learning about different things. With the institutes, you're walking away with a plan or an action plan to bring back to your campus. And so those would be the ways that I would talk about the differences of our programming. So I really encourage people to think about that as an opportunity for professional development as they think about their New Year goals and, and resolutions in terms of their professional development growth.
Yeah, and it's nice how you mentioned with the Administrators Institute that it's like if you're aspiring to be, let's say, a director or administrator, but then also like if you're a coordinator, you oversee an
Mm.
advising center, you're a lead advisor. Like those are also individuals that can go to the Administrators Institute. So I think when they see the word administrator, they might think, "Oh, that's not me." But when you actually look on the website and it lists like these are the individuals that could also be attending, it's a wide range
Yeah.
of different people.
Oh, absolutely, Matt. And I'm so glad you said that, because I think, well, not I think, I know, and in higher education, titles can mean so many things, right? It's really about your role and responsibility. So if you have oversight of a unit that supports student success, it supports academic advising initiatives, right? So you're absolutely right. A coordinator does that. Faculty advising coordinators do that, right? And so it's not just frontline or advisors or fully professional advising units. We also encourage faculty advising units to also take a look at the Administrative Institute, because it's really talking about, like I mentioned earlier, those broader topics around the administration. And I think that that's probably really what we want people to hone in on, is the administration pieces of managing policies, procedures? What are the philosophical things that we need to be thinking about as we're moving these programs forward for the success of all of our students? And so we have the topics listed on the website. And so sometimes people are like, well, what are you going to be talking about in these institutes, Melinda? And so we always tell those who are interested, going on the website, taking a look at the topics that we're going to be discussing. Our seminar actually is a 1.5 day experience that sits in between our institutes. The seminar actually is going to be talking about advising redesign. And so we really have had a lot of institutions that are saying, okay, we know that our enrollment goals, maybe our enrollments are decreasing. What are some ways that we think about redesigning our offices in order to help support retention and persistence efforts? What are some things that we need to be thinking about with advising career ladders? The great resignation is what we've been talking about a little bit. So how do we keep with advisor retention? I know, Matt, we talked a little bit about that. So it's one of those things where we have a seminar just designed to have those conversations as well. And that is definitely for anybody to engage in that level of conversation. And then the biggest part for me is, so then what do we do about it? What are the things that we think about that we're going to take back to our campuses? And then how do we move forward? And that's why I love the institutes, because we work with you. You have consultants, they review your plan of action in terms of what are your next steps when you get back to your campus.
Yeah, and then later on in the year, usually there's summer institutes, there's an international conference. Do you have any update on any of those?
Yes. So the Summer Institute, that is going to be in Erie, Pennsylvania. And so that is going to be in June. And then we have another session that's going to be in July. So there'll be two. And so we definitely want people to think about that. Now, that's a longer experience, definitely. And so, really, that's an opportunity for people to get more content and just like I mentioned earlier, walking away with an action plan. So very much the institutes are designed like that in the summer, but give you a little bit more time with faculty and content. The international conference, it is going to be virtual again this year. When you think about our global partners and when you think about what it means to be a global community from academic advising perspective, the pandemic continues in terms of, can we travel? Where would we travel? What does that look like right now? And so when we thought about partnering with other advising communities globally, so UCAT and LBSA are going to be two of the partners that we're going to connect with in order to put together an academic advising summit. And so we are going to be holding it virtually, but we're going to be partnering with two of a really strong advising communities in the Netherlands and in the UK. And so I think that it's going to be really exciting opportunity for NACADA to partner with a global advising community. Advising professional organizations so that we can come together and really start talking about this larger question around student success and what does it look like, right, in this current climate. And so that is going to be held a little later in September when you think about how all of our campuses calendars kind of come together. So traditionally we would hold it in June, but we're probably going to be holding it a little probably in mid to late September. So our annual conference is a little later this year, so it's actually pretty perfect timing because it gets us through orientation. It gets us through when school starts, and we think about our students our campuses that are on quarters. So it's actually kind of perfect timing for us to think about moving it virtually, but then also holding it at a different time this year. But then next year, when we think about, an international conference, we are thinking about holding it on site. And so our fingers are crossed. And so stay tuned, in terms of where that location is going to be. But we are really excited to be able to get back to holding an international conference on site. And so it's just going to take us a little bit more time as we kind of manage and navigate this the pandemic space.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are very understanding of it. Yeah, it's a little bummer. It can't go, let's say, overseas for many people to go to an international conference, but we'll still have it virtual. More than likely have one in on site the following year. And
Yes.
there is something special about attending an international conference.
Mhm.
So I can speak to that as well. But it is something where I do believe if anyone gets the opportunity to go to an international conference in person, go do it. It'll be well worth it. And you were mentioning the annual conference, so that's going to be in October, a little bit later in October, so October 23rd through the 26th, and that's going to be in Portland, which I think is very exciting for many people because normally we don't necessarily see annual conferences on the West Coast as much. How excited are
Right.
you for that?
I am so pumped to be in Portland, and let me tell you, we are really excited. Annual conference this past year, in Cincinnati was a great experience. It was my first one as executive director, so well, it was like, wow, oh my gosh. And so when you think about, as we come, in 2022, we're excited, to continue our professional development efforts. And so when we think about as we move through this year to Portland, we're just really super excited to be on the West Coast, because you're absolutely right. When you think about kind of how we move conferences around, it's been a minute since we've been to the West, and so I know people are going to be very excited to be in Portland. And when you think about just the energy, right? I joke around the executive office and I say that, the annual conference is kind of like, that culminating experience of when, everybody's coming back together, and, we haven't seen each other all year. And, it's just an opportunity for us to kind of come together to think about the best ways, the best practices. And I encourage people to always think about applying, I'm sorry, no, I say applying, submitting a proposal, for the conference experience. And then also just participating in many different ways. And then it's also an opportunity for all of our NACADA leaders to come together, because they work so hard throughout the year, and just an opportunity to come together and to see each other, and just to, I guess, just be in the midst. Sometimes when you think about the community, the biggest piece about NACADA, when I think about it, is the community that we are creating, between all of us, right? When we think about what academic advising is, and how we're moving in this profession. And so I think coming to the annual conference in Portland is going to give us an opportunity to exhale, to learn new things, and to be together again. So I'm really excited about being in Portland.
Yeah, and you mentioned proposals. So if anyone listening to this in January or part of February, the deadline is February 21st to submit a proposal. And you can submit it for a pre-conference workshop, a concurrent session, a poster session. So various types of opportunities you have for submitting a proposal. And the theme is building bridges, honoring our past, celebrating the present, and preparing for the future. And I feel like everything that you've talked about already kind of encompasses that theme. And so I think whether you're going to an institute, a region conference, annual conference, international, virtually, there's going to be something that you're going to gain, something that you're going to learn. And speaking of attending one of these, whether it is an institute, a region conference, international, annual conference, many people want to go, but maybe right now, and I've asked Chris Kirchhoff this a couple of episodes ago, budget's an issue with a lot of institutions. Uh, there's a lot of different priorities, and maybe professional development for some departments isn't necessarily a top priority right now. And a lot of advising professionals are, like you mentioned, we need to work on wellness. A lot of them are bogged down with just
Mm.
constant work, appointments, etc. What's your advice for them that want to go to a conference, but they may not have as much a support as they would need?
Right. No, Matt, I'm glad that you asked me that question, because it is a reality when you think about campuses, especially if you're in a really large staff, for example, or even if a small staff, right? Can I afford to lose you for a couple of days when work continues and students still need you? Or a really large staff, when you think about equity, right? Like who gets to go and who can't go. I will say with the institutes, we do have scholarship opportunities. So for people who are really interested in going to an institute and they haven't been before, we do have institute scholarships that are available for people to apply for. And so I would really encourage people to check that out. And so going to, your supervisor and letting them know that I have an opportunity to attend this event, but then here's some financial support that NACADA is willing to provide to help decrease the cost of attendance. That usually does help supervisors to know that, okay, this person is really coming to me with a plan. They're not just asking for money, but they're wanting, my support, and then they're also looking for ways to defray the cost of being able to attend. And so that often can help with getting support in order to attend a conference. I think also in terms of, for example, when we think about, okay, if I'm on a really small staff or a really large staff, I think professional development, when you start talking about philosophically, how do you continue to improve processes? How do you continue to get stronger to help students? How do you look at data and analyze that and become efficient? How do you continue to help students where you need to help students, right? So working smarter and not harder. Those are all the things that when I was working on campus and I was talking to my supervisors, I know that sometimes just these conversations of what it is that I hope to learn and to bring back to my campus is one way to start the conversation about why professional development is needed. I think sometimes, just like wellness, right? It's the first thing that goes because it's thing that feels the easiest, right? Like, do I need to go to that conference? Do I need to go to that event? Do I need to strengthen myself in these areas if I'm not going to put it into immediate use? And so I always encourage people to think about professional development as not the hospital, right? Like something's broken, so now I need to go fix it, but to think of it as the gym, right? Think of it as a way to get stronger, to improve processes so that you can continue to not get burnt out, right? Working smarter, not harder, protects against burnout. When people ask me the question around career ladders, if you're an administrator and you're thinking about retention for your advisors, and so you don't have gaps, these events, these institutes, they're designed in a way to help support your thinking and to build community, to start thinking about how you protect yourself against those things, right? And so that you don't find yourself with those gaps, right? And then now you're trying to figure out, okay, how do I keep moving forward? Because we want to make sure that students continue to be supported. And so those are the philosophical reasons why I would say that professional development should not be the first thing that you think of when you go. When I think about from a financial standpoint, I always ask the question, what do you stop, start, and continue? What are the things that you could stop paying for because you need to start paying for other things, right? What are the things that are not really working for you, but you're just used to doing them, right? And so that might be one way to determine if there is room in the budget for things that you need to start doing in order to continue to improve and to get better. And so the other thing that I think about professional development budgets, when you start thinking about who should go, right? It becomes an equity piece. I think about tying roles and responsibilities. And when I think in that way, when you think about equity in terms of what people are learning, not everybody can go to everything, right? So maybe this year they go to this annual conference, and then next year, the other group, we lay our information out, up to 4 years in advance. So then people know exactly where our conferences are going to be. So I say all that to say, right, these are not just going to be easy decisions. They're going to require communication. They're going to require sometimes for you to lay out a plan. They're going to require for you to think through, what do I stop doing so that I can start doing the things that are going to really matter to continue to improve. When you think about tying enrollment, enrollments dipping down on campuses, and you're tying that to maybe the budgets and the expenditures that you have, those can be really hard decisions to make, right? We need to do more of this in order to make sure that we're sustaining what's happening on our campuses. But I always tell people that the value, we're in learning institutions. The value of educating and to continue to get stronger and to get smarter are invaluable, right? And professional development is one way that we get it done. And then I also encourage people that we do have tutorials, we do have, webinars. There are ways to get professional development in virtual settings, right? Now, of course, we're talking about, in-person events, and so I think that it is an opportunity, right, for you to kind of come into an environment and be fully engaged. But virtual opportunities for those who do have budget constraints, or they're trying to put a lot of information, I'm trying to connect a lot of their, for example, it'd be great to have a webinar, and then you have, professional development opportunity for your entire campus. And so I always encourage those opportunities as well because they work really, really well. But I know that our focus today was just a little bit on the in-person events and everything like that. But that would be kind of just my quick thoughts about how to help people understand, like, number one, the importance of professional development, not to let it fall by the wayside. It's just too critical now in terms of the way that we're operating in this space around student success and academic advising practices.
Oh, yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, it's something where professional development should not be pushed off to the side, or we'll get to it later. Let's just get through this. Like, it needs to be incorporated in whether it's the department or the individual. It is something that should be ongoing. And like we did last episode, I want to do the same thing for this one with our time remaining as now we start 2022. What's your message to advisor professionals as a start of the year message?
Yes, it is that time. When I think about the beginning of the year, my hopes for all of our members in the association is that you are looking into this new year with hope and opportunity, that you're stepping into the spaces that you need to be in, that you are thinking about how you will continue to grow and move into excellence and find yourself in wonderful spaces to continue to grow around community and to be there in support of your students, your colleagues, um, in support of all the things that you need to keep moving forward, um, that will keep you balanced and to keep you well and keep you in safe spaces. When I think about the new year, I know many of us might keep reflecting on the past, but the one thing that I want to keep people in mind is something that I've been reflecting on myself. We take who we are always with us, but we want to remember who we're trying to become. And that evolution is what we're always striving for. And so I wish people peace and wellness and hope as they move into this new year.
Awesome. And I think people listening right now are definitely agree and take that to heart. So, Melinda, thank you so much for being on as always. And I look forward to having you on future episodes with some more interviews.
Yes, thank you again. And Matt, I cannot tell you enough about how wonderful this opportunity has been for me to be able to engage with you in adventures in advising and the space that you have provided so many professionals to talk about their love of academic advising, and then just to be able to express themselves and for people to get to know them in virtual spaces that people wouldn't have been able to know them otherwise. So thank you again for all the work that you do and that you'll continue to do. I heart you, Matt Markin.
I heart you too. I appreciate that. And hey, we're at episode 50, so let's do another 50 more.
All right. Sounds good to me. Let's do it.